The story opens in a shadowy room where the main character slowly wakes up. In front of him lies a girl, motionless, her body resting on a glowing crimson magic circle surrounded by flickering candles. Confused and alarmed, he asks himself what's going on, his eyes darting across the room. Strange coffins line the walls, and the floor is smeared with writings in blood. A wave of panic hits as he struggles to understand where he is. Suddenly, fragments of memory rush back. He remembers the blinding headlights of a truck, the crash, and the realization that he was on his way to the hospital when his life ended. Could it be that he was reincarnated? Before he can process it, the girl stirs and whispers his name, Lux. Stunned, he blurts out, asking if she really called him that, and she nods. Overwhelmed, he grabs her shoulders and shakes her, desperate for confirmation. Startled by his sudden intensity, the girl cries out. Heart pounding, he scrambles to find a mirror. When his eyes finally meet his reflection, the truth crashes down on him. He isn't himself anymore. He has become Lux Zeldia, a character from the game Blaze Fantasy. Horror fills him as he realizes this is the worst possible twist. That very game was the one he had been addicted to for years. His gaze then shifts to a map hanging on the wall, showing the kingdom of Rogland and the Zeldia family's territory. Thoughts spiral in his mind, fear mixing with disbelief. As he stares, lost in shock, the girl, still bound, softly asks if he's alright, confused by his sudden obsession with the map. At that moment, Lux came to a clear realization. There was no mistaking it. Everything around him matched perfectly with the official world setting from the book he knew so well. While the girl sat there looking puzzled, Lux paced the room, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had read that book so many times the pages had grown soft from use. It was a thick volume, one he had bought for a hefty 6,800 yen, and worth every coin to him. Blaze Fantasy, or Blaspheme, as players called it, had always been his favorite game. In that game, the player's main goal was to raise the affection of different heroines. There was a school life section where you worked toward a happy ending, and a battle section where you fought alongside those heroines to defeat the Demon King. It was a beloved action RPG that had captured his heart. And now, there was no doubt about it, Lux had actually been reborn inside Blaspheme. His mind then wandered to Lyra Scarlet, wondering how she was doing. When he mentioned her name, the girl before him tilted her head and asked if he meant the princess, casually noting that she was fine. Excited, Lux quickly asked about Eliza and Claire as well. But to the girl, it sounded like he was just rattling off names of random women. Smirking, she teased him about being in love with all of them. Lux didn't even try to deny it. He boldly admitted it was true. Of course, what he meant was that he loved them as a fan, but the girl only grew more bewildered at his confession. As she gave him a strange look, Lux's mind spun with a thrilling idea of actually meeting those heroines now that he was living inside this world. He began replaying the storylines of the game in his head, completely forgetting that the girl was still staring at him in confusion. Only after a while did he snap back to the present and finally ask her what she was doing there. Out of nowhere, the girl let out a sharp scream, accusing him of what he had done to her. This girl was Morga, a maid in training who worked for the Zeldia family. Lux froze, completely lost, since he couldn't remember anything she was talking about. The truth was that, before he reincarnated, the original Lux had tried to perform a demon summoning ritual, and Morga had been chosen as the sacrifice. Because he had suddenly been thrown into this body, Lux had no memory of those events. In Blaspheme, Lux Zeldia wasn't a hero, but a mid-level boss, someone hated and looked down upon. Trying to change that fate, Lux quickly declared that they would cancel the summoning, and instead clean up the entire mess. He untied Morga and apologized for dragging her into it. Expecting her to be angry, he was surprised when she admitted she didn't really mind after all. It got her out of her regular chores. Lux stammered at her strange logic, unable to understand how skipping work could outweigh being part of a demon ritual. Still, the two set about tidying the room together. While they worked, Lux quietly wondered what his next move should be. At that moment, another maid stepped inside, telling Morga she was needed in the main hall. But when her eyes landed on Lux, she froze, stammering in shock. He quickly apologized for frightening her and for keeping Morga occupied. The maid, however, avoided his gaze nervously. Then, by accident, her eyes met his face and she shrieked in terror. To her, he looked like the cursed child of the evil eye. Lux stood stunned as the maid turned and ran straight for the door. Morga called after her to wait, but the girl didn't stop. The room fell silent, and Morga tried to comfort Lux. He brushed it off, pretending he was fine, and admitted he could understand her fear. After all, in this world, anyone with the evil eye was hated. Centuries ago, the previous Demon King had also been born with the cursed evil eye. Over time, fear of this power became etched so deeply in people's minds that it turned into legend. It was said that any child born with such an eye would only bring ruin to the nation. Because of this superstition, Lux's own life was marked by tragedy. His mother ended her life not long after giving birth to him, and his father treated him as though he wasn't even there. Shunned from the start for being the child of the evil eye, the original Lux grew twisted, his heart consumed by an obsession with summoning demons. Years later, he actually managed to resurrect the Demon King's soul. From then on, Lux was manipulated, forced into endless battles against the hero. Eventually, his mind gave in to the Demon King's whispers, and in every path of the story, Lux's fate was sealed death. His corpse became the Demon King's final tool, as the evil eye was ripped from him to bring about the king's full revival. That meant so long as Lux carried the evil eye, he would always be hunted by the Demon King's forces. Even now, after being reincarnated, it seemed like his destiny was only to meet death faster. In a twisted way, it felt like he had been reborn just to speedrun his end. Dark thoughts filled his mind, his fears spilling out through his gaze. But then, reality pulled him back when Morga spoke again. She explained that the maid who had run off was still new. Lux brushed it off, saying it didn't matter, but Morga continued, revealing the truth: the maid's village had been destroyed by demons, which explained why she feared the evil eye more than anyone else. Lux understood her pain all too well. Suddenly, his vision blurred, stars dancing before his eyes. His body gave out, and the last thing he heard before falling into darkness was Morga's desperate voice calling his name. Later that night, Lux slowly woke up again. He tried to brush it off, saying he was just a little worn out, but Morga firmly told him to rest. She even began feeding him, though Lux quickly assured her that he could manage on his own. Out of nowhere, he asked if she was scared of his evil eye. Morga blinked in surprise, confused by why he was bringing it up now. She admitted that, yes, at first she had been afraid. But after spending time with him, she realized the so-called evil eye didn't actually do anything harmful. Over time, she stopped fearing it. Now, she said with a gentle smile, it just felt like she was looking after a spoiled younger brother. Her words struck Lux deeply. Half teasing, he asked if that really made him the little brother. Without hesitation, Morgan nodded, reminding him that she was older anyway. That night, as Lux lay in bed, her words lingered in his heart. But his thoughts drifted back to his cursed eye. Turning toward the nightstand, he noticed a slip of paper sticking out of an old book. Curious, he pulled it out and discovered a list, something the original Lux must have written. Reading through it, his chest tightened. The list revealed that the old Lux wanted revenge on those who mocked his eyes. He longed for recognition from his father. But above all, he simply wanted happiness. Lux stared at the words in silence, lifting his hand toward his eye as if trying to understand the pain behind them. Closing his eyes, he came to a quiet decision. The following morning, Morgan nearly panicked when Lux announced that he wanted to head to the training grounds. She reminded him that just last year, he had given up only minutes into practice. That fact puzzled Lux too, but when he looked down at his thin arms, the reason became clear: he was hopelessly weak. It was no wonder that, even in the game, Lux had always been a terrible swordsman. But Lux had already made up his mind. With determination burning in his voice, he told Morga to take him to the training grounds. Though hesitant, she eventually gave in and led him there. The area was filled with young men practicing hard, each of them aiming to become skilled swordsmen. Curious, Morga asked what exactly Lux intended to do. He replied with confidence he planned to test out his evil eye. Her eyes widened in confusion, but Lux explained that he wanted to try something new. In the game, he had never really understood how to use the evil eye properly, but this time he felt he could. It wasn't just a curse meant to frighten others, it had real power. Closing his eyes for a moment, he reopened them with sharp concentration. Instantly, his surroundings changed. He could sense the movements of the soldiers around him as if their skills were flowing directly into his body. Every swing, every step, they resonated within him. Morga eventually interrupted, saying it was time to head back. Surprised, Lux argued they had only just begun, but then he noticed the orange glow of the setting sun. Hours had passed in what felt like minutes. That only confirmed it: his plan might actually work. For the rest of the week, Lux returned to the training grounds every single day. He didn't join in but stayed on the sidelines, watching with intense focus. Soon, the soldiers began noticing him. One pointed out how often he came, while another muttered that all he did was stare. Eventually, a man walked up to him, breaking the silence. He asked if Lux wasn't overdue to get some training himself. Lux hadn't sensed his presence at all, but he masked his nerves and casually asked who the man was. The stranger introduced himself as Joris, the commanding officer. Lux tensed immediately, realizing how powerful he seemed. Joris crouched slightly to meet Lux's eyes, a hint of amusement in his gaze, and asked him directly did Lux want him to be his mentor. Out of nowhere, Lux asked if Joris intended to fight him. The question caught the old man off guard, but Lux, brimming with confidence, declared that he wanted to test his own strength. Morga, however, grew uneasy, worried about how reckless Lux was being. After all, Joris wasn't just anyone, he was a former captain of the Royal Knights, a man whose skill and discipline were reflected in every soldier under his command. Joris turned his back on Lux and calmly agreed to the challenge, though he warned that he wouldn't be responsible if Lux ended up badly hurt. Soon after, both of them made their way to the arena, swords in hand. The gathered soldiers looked on in disbelief. None of them could understand why this boy was about to duel their commanding officer, but they stayed silent, curious to see what would happen. Standing across from Joris, Lux steadied his breathing, focusing his mind. From the sidelines, Morga scolded him for his recklessness, her voice sharp with worry. Joris, in contrast, remained calm and stern, telling Lux to give it everything he had. With a sudden spark of determination, Lux lifted his sword and shouted that he would take that offer. In the next instant, he launched forward at a speed that almost seemed inhuman. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Neither Morga nor the soldiers could believe what they were seeing. Lux's blade clashed against Joris's with tremendous force, the sound echoing through the arena. For the first time, Joris's expression shifted, his eyes widening slightly. He recognized the technique, the very sword style he had once taught within the Royal Knights, now being used by the boy standing before him. Joris then asked if Lux had really picked up that sword style just by watching. The truth was, the evil eye carried several abilities, and one of them was the Eye of Observation. When pushed to its limit, it allowed Lux to copy sword techniques and even magic spells simply by seeing them, like having a built-in cheat code. No grueling training arcs were needed when his eye worked like the ultimate shortcut. The duel raged on, neither side willing to give in. The soldiers watching were stunned. Lux, the boy with the cursed eye, was holding his ground against Joris, the seasoned commander. After a while, Lux pulled back, breathing heavily. He prepared to unleash the power slash, a move that made the spectators whisper in confusion. It was a beginner's technique, nothing impressive. But Joris didn't lower his guard. He could sense something different. Lux wasn't planning to use the slash in its usual form. He was pouring an extraordinary amount of magic into it, tapping into the true essence of the evil eye. Gathering every ounce of strength he had, Lux made a silent vow. He would not repeat the fate of the original storyline, dying and having his eye stolen by the Demon King. No, this time he would break the script. He would erase the role of villains, erase the middle bosses, and stop the Demon King's resurrection altogether. If he succeeded, the world would finally be safe, left only with the romance and happy endings between the heroes and heroines. Lux even laughed to himself at the thought it would turn him into just a background mob character. But that was fine. In fact, it was more than enough. Still, to achieve that peaceful future, he needed power. And to gain that power, he would master the full potential of his evil eye. Gripping his sword tightly, Lux dropped into position and charged straight at Joris. The strike landed with such force that the old knight bent to one knee to take the blow. Sword raised high, Lux shouted his resolve that he would live as a mere mob character, but one who would protect everyone. His heart burned with determination, refusing to accept the cruel fate written for him. He lunged again with everything he had, but while Lux fought with fiery passion, Joris met his strikes with calm, unshakable confidence. Soon, Lux's breath grew heavy, his strength faltering as he held onto his sword. Then it happened, his body gave out. Pain ripped through him, and he collapsed to the ground, crying out in agony. Every muscle screamed, leaving him shocked. What kind of move had just crushed him like that? Joris stepped forward, explaining in a composed voice that he hadn't used any special technique, he had simply blocked the attack. Lux's eyes widened in disbelief. How could that be? Joris clarified. While Lux had perfectly copied his soldiers' sword skills, his body was nowhere near as trained as theirs. In short, Lux had pushed himself far beyond what his body could handle. The realization shook him. It felt like trying to solo a boss fight with a level 1 character. Still trembling, Lux forced himself back to his feet and apologized for his reckless behavior. Yet his determination didn't waver. He declared that he truly wanted to grow stronger, asking if Joris would be willing to guide him. But before he could even finish the question, the old knight gave his answer yes. From that moment, Joris would help rebuild Lux's weak body from the ground up. Grateful, Lux bowed his head, asking Joris to take care of him. A few days later, Joris resumed his duties as the soldiers' drill master. His sharp voice echoed across the field as he ordered them to run another 20 laps. Groans and complaints filled the air. Everyone was exhausted, gasping for breath, saying they couldn't take this torture anymore. One soldier glanced at Lux and asked if he could still keep up, but Lux didn't waste his breath on an answer. Instead, he kept swinging his sword, his focus unshaken. His movements were sharp and disciplined, enough to make the others murmur in admiration. Joris, overhearing their chatter, wasn't impressed. To him, Lux's precise movements weren't training at all. So, with a strict tone, he ordered the soldiers to complete 100 sword swings, leaving them wide-eyed in shock. Lux, however, smiled faintly. He understood what Joris was doing. Sword techniques could be copied with the evil eye, but endurance, that was something he had to build himself. And that thought thrilled him. The idea of forging a strong body excited Lux more than anything. He threw himself into training, pushing his body until sunset. By the next morning, he was flat on his bed, every muscle screaming in pain. Joris casually noted that it was just severe muscle ache, while Morga scolded him for overdoing it. After all, Lux had been locked away for so long, it wasn't surprising his body wasn't ready for this kind of strain. Lux, however, didn't seem to hear their worries. His mind was spinning with wild visions of having a perfectly trained body. Joris told Morga that once Lux recovered, training would continue. Rest was also part of the process, and for now, it was the only thing he needed. That night, lying weakly on his bed, Lux's thoughts drifted to the bigger picture. Only 5 years remained before the main game would truly begin. But already, he had stepped off the path of the original Lux. He knew the evil eye would be targeted again and again, and whatever awaited him ahead, he was ready to face it. There was also the chance that the Demon King revival cult would act soon, which meant living as just a background character wouldn't be so simple after all. On top of that, a big event was coming even before the main game officially began. Lux knew he couldn't afford to waste any time. The very next day, Morga went around the entire mansion looking for him. She even asked another maid if she'd seen Lux, and finally got her answer. He was in his study, buried in books about dark magic. Carrying a tray of snacks, Morga stepped into the room, but her foot slipped and the tray went flying. In that instant, Lux cast his magic to slow everything down. To Morga's shock, he didn't bother saving her from falling, he only saved the tray of food. She hit the floor while the snacks landed safely. It was like she had been betrayed by gravity itself. After brushing off the embarrassment, Morga noticed the books and pointed out that he was studying magic. Lux explained that since his body was still healing, he wanted to use the time wisely. But something clearly bothered him. When she asked what was wrong, Lux admitted that he could only use dark magic. Morga raised an eyebrow and asked why that was a problem. He sighed, confessing that he wanted to use flashy spells, but all he could manage were support skills and debuffs. Morga wasn't having it. She reminded him that being able to use any kind of magic at all was already a gift. Her words hit Lux, especially when he realized she wasn't one of the lucky ones. She went on to explain that most people couldn't use magic at all, and she even envied him for it. Morga then recalled a senior maid who could use wind magic. It wasn't for fighting, but it was perfect for drying laundry. Even something so simple could be incredibly useful in daily life. At that moment, Lux shifted his mindset. There was no use wishing for magic he didn't have. Instead, he decided to fully dedicate himself to mastering dark magic. He explained to Morga that his combat style would be built around weakening enemies with debuffs while fighting with a sword. Hearing this, Morga's eyes lit up, and she eagerly offered to support him however she could. Later, Lux returned to his books, enjoying a rare moment of calm as he sipped tea and munched on sandwiches. He couldn't help but praise how tasty they were, which made Morga smile proudly. After all, she was the one who made them. When he thanked her, she laughed shyly, clearly pleased. But Lux wasn't done. He wanted to give her something in return. Using his imitation spell, Lux summoned dark magic to recreate objects. Normally, this required long observation of the original, but thanks to the evil eye's sharp perception, the process was almost effortless. Under the glow of his spell, a sandwich began to form in his hand. At first, Morga was amazed, but her excitement quickly turned into horror. The sandwich's final form was completely black, like it had crawled out of a nightmare. That thing carried lore. Lux scratched his head, embarrassed by the result. He admitted that he hadn't prepared the ingredients beforehand and had instead made them directly out of his mana. Morga noticed the sandwich crumbling apart in her hands, and Lux explained that materials created from pure mana would eventually break down. Worse, if his mana was drained, they would vanish entirely. Still, the thought lingered in his mind, what if it was actually possible to craft something perfect out of mana alone? Lux sat lost in thought, connecting pieces of information in his mind. He was so focused that he didn't even hear Morga calling his name out of concern. Snapping back to reality, he suddenly declared that his plan might actually work. He asked where the maid with wind magic was, and Morga answered that she was probably in the kitchen. When Morga asked if he was heading there, Lux nodded firmly. She hesitated, glancing at the strange black sandwich still on the table, wondering what on earth she should do with it. But Lux, completely caught up in his ideas, didn't bother to reply. Left alone, Morga stared at the odd gift, unsure if she should laugh, cry, or toss it away. Meanwhile, Lux threw himself into magic research and training every day. His efforts finally paid off. He had recovered enough strength to return to the training grounds. The anticipation of a real fight made his blood race. Soon, Joris signaled the start of the spar, and Lux and his opponent charged forward, swords clashing in a storm of steel and force. Both gave it their all, refusing to hold back. The soldier apologized mid-battle, saying he couldn't go easy on the young master. Lux only grinned and replied that he had no intention of holding back either. With a burst of speed, Lux launched himself into a backflip, moving faster than he thought possible. He was stunned. His body had reacted exactly the way he imagined it. He wasn't winded, nor did he feel fatigued. A smile crept across his face. This was proof of his hard work and training paying off. But his joy was short-lived. The soldier suddenly swung his blade at him, praising his skills. Startled back into reality, Lux quickly raised his sword to defend. The soldier admitted he couldn't match Lux's skill, but he still held the advantage in raw strength. With a crushing blow, he forced Lux down to one knee, the weight of the strike pressing heavily on him. Realizing he needed space, Lux prepared to break free. At that moment, Joris shouted from the sidelines, asking if that was really all Lux had. He reminded him that his true potential was far greater than what he was showing. Lux muttered to himself that he wasn't holding back, but if Joris believed there was more in him, then he would push past his limit. In a sudden burst of speed, Lux leapt back, putting distance between himself and his opponent. The soldier stood tall, warning him that retreat alone wouldn't win the fight. But Lux wasn't running away, he was preparing. Summoning his strength, Lux activated his imitation spell. With the help of his evil eye's sharp perception, he copied the fury of a raging storm. Gathering that terrifying energy, he unleashed a roaring death cyclone. The battlefield howled with violent winds, forcing the soldier to grit his teeth as he fought against the crushing force. But the storm was too much. Eventually, he collapsed to the ground, defeated. Joris quickly ended the match, declaring Lux the winner. Gasping for breath, the soldier admitted the attack was overwhelming and conceded. He then remarked that Lux might actually be a magic swordsman, though Lux himself was reluctant to accept the title. Still, the soldier confessed that he and the others would never stand a chance against him. Lux admitted he had always wanted to test this technique, and seeing it succeed brought him satisfaction. The soldier gave him a nervous smile, praising his talent, though he admitted it was frightening. When the battle ended and the air finally calmed, Joris walked up to Lux and asked if relying on magic wasn't a little unfair. Lux scratched his head and admitted it probably was. But then Joris broke into laughter, saying he was only joking, that in a real fight, any weapon or skill was fair game. More importantly, Joris pointed out that Lux's performance was the result of his own effort. Hearing those words, Lux was stunned. He hadn't expected such praise, and it honestly touched him. The other soldiers joined in, complimenting him for surviving training that felt like torture. Lux laughed it off, though he secretly knew he had nearly died in the process. His opponent ruffled his hair with a grin, and Lux couldn't help but chuckle back. As the group dispersed, Lux thought to himself maybe he really was starting to gain the strength needed to protect his cursed eye. At least one thing was certain: his mob character plan was finally moving forward. But before he could relax, Joris gathered everyone again and announced tomorrow's training would be even more brutal. The soldiers groaned in despair, their faces pale at the thought. Determined to follow his new path, Lux threw himself into the grind. Day after day, he endured harsh drills, pushed his swordsmanship further, and spent sleepless nights buried in magic books. The toll was clear. He looked like a wreck. Morga panicked when she saw him in such a state, but Lux brushed it off, saying he was too busy with research. Morga simply sighed, wished him luck, and let him be. That evening at dinner, Lux remembered to pray before eating. But once his prayer ended, he tore into the food like a starving wolf. Each bite was satisfying, far different from the bleak life he had before. Smiling, he turned to the maids and sincerely thanked them for preparing such delicious meals. Instead of feeling happy about his thanks, the maids looked more frightened than anything. The awkward mood in the room made Lux wonder what was going on. That's when Morga stepped forward with a frown, telling him it was his own fault. His odd behavior in the past had left a lasting impression. Lux was confused, but Morga explained further before his reincarnation. He had done all sorts of bizarre things. He once sacrificed meat in a ritual to summon a demon, drew magic circles with ketchup, and even turned a piece of bread into a makeshift voodoo doll. The guy had basically been role-playing dark magic with lunch food. Lux slapped his forehead in embarrassment, dreading what other nonsense the original him might have pulled. The way the maids looked at him felt oddly familiar, though back in his past life, his classmates had stared at him the same way. Because of his constant sickness, he rarely went to school, and when he did, people treated him like an outsider. Strangely enough, he realized that he and the old Lux weren't so different. Both were isolated by circumstances they couldn't control. Trying to shake off those heavy memories, Lux started making strange movements without realizing it, which only made the maids more uneasy. Later, as he walked through the halls with Morga, she admitted that most of the maids still held strong prejudice against him. Lux shrugged it off, saying he was used to those kinds of stares. But then he noticed Morga had gone quiet. When he asked why, she finally admitted her frustration. She could see how hard he was trying to change, yet no one else seemed to notice. Her words stunned Lux. Moved by her honesty, he quietly thanked her. Lux reminded Morga that earning the maid's trust wouldn't happen overnight. But Morga pushed back, saying it wouldn't take long at all. Confused, Lux asked what she meant, admitting that changing people's views of him seemed nearly impossible. Morga shook her head and bluntly pointed out that the real problem was his appearance. Lux blinked in surprise, unsure what she was getting at. She explained further his face still carried that shady, untrustworthy look, making others believe he was the same as before. To them, he seemed creepy, frightening, and even a little unkempt. Her words cut deep, and Lux couldn't help but protest, saying she was being too harsh. He defended himself, insisting he bathed every single day. Did appearances really matter that much? In his mind, it was what was inside that truly counted. But Morga didn't hold back. She told him flat out that he looked like one of the Demon King's underlings. That hit him hard. If she was right, his dream of being a simple mob character was slipping away. The thought of the original Lux flashed through his mind, making him panic. In desperation, he dropped to the floor, bowing and begging Morga to fix this problem. She smirked confidently and promised to handle it. Not long after, Lux was introduced to Melon, the Zeldia family's fashion expert. Melon looked him over and asked what exactly he wanted. Nervous, Lux stammered that he just wanted to look normal. Both women immediately shot him sharp glares, unimpressed by his vague answer. Melon crossed her arms and told Morga that Lux had the fashion sense of a rock, calling his taste absolute trash. Morga quietly reminded Melon that she had already explained things to Lux. Still, Lux couldn't figure out what mistake he had made. Melon then mocked him for having no sense of style, pointing out that just wanting to look decent had landed him in this mess. Lux panicked, shivering as he tried to deny it, but the girls weren't having it. They scolded him, saying fashion wasn't something you could master in a day. Being clean and actually looking clean were two completely different things. Overwhelmed by their fiery words, Lux quickly apologized for being so clueless and begged them to teach him fashion from the ground up. In other words, he got bullied into a makeover. From there, Melon got to work. She trimmed his hair, tested out various products on him, and even shaped his eyebrows. By the end of the day, Lux was lying back with a face mask on, exhausted. He sighed, realizing how much effort it actually took to be stylish. For the first time, he felt sympathy for male models. They really went through a lot. Still, he couldn't afford to slip up. If he let himself go, he risked looking like one of the Demon King's lackeys again. That thought made him pause. When it came to his evil eye, people were terrified of it, and more importantly, it didn't match the role of a background mob character. He remembered that in the original game, even the Demon King didn't always keep his evil eye active. Just then, Morga entered his room to ask about plans for tomorrow. But what she saw stopped her in her tracks. Lux was muttering to his evil eye, telling it to calm down. Confused, she asked what he was doing. Lux explained honestly that he was just experimenting to see if he could somehow turn the evil eye off. Morga wondered if such a thing was even possible, and Lux admitted it wouldn't be easy, but it wasn't impossible either. Hearing that, she immediately offered to help him with research. From then on, Lux's days grew even busier. One day, he dressed himself in his best suit, neatly groomed and looking sharper than ever. The maids couldn't stop staring, completely dazzled by his transformation. When he told them goodbye, many of them looked disappointed, even asking when he would return. Lux was taken aback, but explained that he was heading out to take down some monsters. In that moment, he realized Morga had been right all along. Appearance really did matter. The maids continued praising him, especially his striking blue eyes. Morga felt proud of the results of her work, though her pride quickly turned into frustration when the maids eagerly offered to wash Lux's back. She rushed in to stop them, scolding them for getting carried away. With that, Lux's plan to blend in as a background mob character had taken another step forward. After months of his reincarnation, he finally set out to fight monsters. Around that time, one of the key heroines of Blaze fantasy, Eliza Carroll, was about to encounter Lux for the first time in Zeldia territory, near the old capital, Graham Rosleo. Lux was accompanied by Joris, and together they completed the monster hunt much faster than expected. But Joris frowned, saying this hardly counted as proper training for the young master. Just then, a girl walked up to Lux and asked if he belonged to the Zeldia family. Out of nowhere, Joris and the other soldiers dropped to their knees, showing respect to the girl who had just appeared. Lux was stunned. The girl, Elisha, smiled warmly at him and greeted him as if they were already familiar. Lux's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected to run into a major character from the original game this soon. This was Elisha Coral, the eldest daughter of the powerful Coral family, one of the 3 great houses. More importantly, she was the older sister of Eliza, the main heroine herself. Just realizing that connection made Lux tense, and he struggled to keep his composure. When he tried to greet her, his words came out clumsy and hesitant. Elisha, however, didn't seem to mind. She leaned in closer, studying his face carefully, and teased him by saying he had grown quite handsome. Lux's cheeks warmed at her words, and deep inside he felt proud his efforts to change himself were finally paying off. Then Elisha casually mentioned that her sister, Eliza, was also with her. Lux froze, completely caught off guard. He wasn't ready to meet the heroine this soon. But before he could protest, Elisha called out for her. From behind, Eliza slowly stepped forward, each of her footsteps making Lux's nerves skyrocket. She kept her head lowered, quietly asking her sister what she wanted. But in the very next moment, her shy aura vanished. She burst out, scolding Elisha for being too loud and annoying. Shaking her head, she flatly refused to greet Lux. Elisha only laughed and apologized to him for her sister's blunt behavior. Lux wasn't upset by Eliza's sharp attitude, if anything. It hit him like a wave of nostalgia. His eyes grew misty as he realized something important. This was the Eliza he remembered. The heroine who would never show sweetness to anyone except the true protagonist. Her fiery tsundere side was exactly as he knew it from the game. Out of nowhere, Elisha suggested that Lux keep Eliza company. He froze for a second, but then the thought sank in this might actually be a golden chance. If he wanted to avoid a villain's fate, he had to earn Eliza's trust. Trying to sound casual, he stepped closer and greeted her, saying it had been a long time. Eliza, however, just stared at him blankly, and that's when it hit Lux maybe he had smiled a little too widely. She kept silent for a moment before asking bluntly, "Who are you?" Panic rushed through him, and he quickly insisted that he was Lux Zeldia. Eliza frowned, struggling to believe it was really him, remembering the scrawny boy she once knew. As her sharp eyes scanned over his changed appearance, Lux flinched, awkwardly asking her not to stand so close. That was when it became clear to him. Unlike her sister, Eliza carried herself with an air of superiority, always looking down on others. To him, this fit perfectly with the Eliza he expected. Suddenly, she leaned in even closer, her gaze sharp, and questioned him about something that caught her attention: his evil eye. Lux calmly explained that he had learned to shut it off. Hearing that, Eliza scoffed, saying if he had done that sooner, he could have avoided a lot of problems. Her words stunned Lux, but at the same time, he felt warmth in them. Was she actually worried about him? Overcome with emotion, he called her kind, which only left Eliza flustered and red-faced. Eliza suddenly snapped, shouting that nobody cared about him. But almost instantly, she corrected herself, realizing that nobody was a bit too much. It was like she tried to stay cold, but her real feelings slipped out. Lux's chest warmed at that moment. Deep down, Eliza wasn't cruel at all. His endless smiling only made her face turn red, and in embarrassment, she shoved him lightly, telling him to quit grinning. Later, the two of them walked together around the area. Curious, Eliza asked about his sword training, but quickly teased him for suddenly taking it so seriously. Lux, on the other hand, had a strange thought: was he starting to enjoy being mocked by her? Before he could dwell on it, Eliza admitted she was actually interested and wanted to see his skills for herself. Lux was stunned that she'd even ask, but Eliza explained that just a year ago he looked so worn out and pathetic it made her curious about how much he had changed. Encouraged, Lux decided to show her one of his newest techniques. In a split second, he dashed forward, kicking off the ground with such explosive strength that the impact created a shockwave. Eliza froze in place, her eyes wide. She stammered, asking what on earth she had just seen. She couldn't even follow his movements. "How much did you train in such a short time?" she asked in disbelief. But Lux didn't reply. He was too caught up in his own realization. Something about his movement felt off. He gestured toward the wall nearby, now cracked from the sheer force of his attack. Eliza stared at the damage, her surprise slowly shifting into recognition. At last, she muttered that he had done well for the Lux she once knew. Later, Lux casually asked Eliza why she had come to the Zeldia territory. Without hesitation, she said it was to see His Highness. Lux froze, buffering for a second, wondering if she meant the Prince of the Kingdom. Eliza tilted her head, concerned by his reaction, and asked who else it could possibly be. Her eyes softened, almost sparkling, as she admitted that the prince was truly wonderful. In that instant, Lux remembered this was the time when Eliza had fallen for the prince. But her cheerful face quickly shifted into a frown. She complained that her sister hadn't told her anything, and that she had been trying hard to meet him. Then she turned to Lux, asking nervously if the situation was bad. Lux didn't answer right away. He was too deep in thought, connecting the dots, and an uneasy feeling started creeping over him. Eliza suddenly wondered aloud where her sister had gone and decided to look for her. But before she could leave, Lux stopped her, suggesting that if her sister and the prince were meeting in secret, it might already mean they were lovers. His words left Eliza stunned. She looked at him with wide, innocent eyes and quietly asked why he thought that. Lux hesitated, struggling to respond, but before he could gather his words, Eliza turned away and made her decision. She told him not to follow and walked off. Lux tried to stop her, but she refused to listen. Just then, Eliza's eyes widened in shock at the sight before her. Was Lux's bad feeling about to be proven true? Eliza froze when she saw her sister kissing the prince. Her heart sank as she whispered to herself, "What are they doing?" It was like watching her own ship sink before it ever had a chance to sail. Meanwhile, Lux felt the heavy tension in the air. To him, this was the worst-case scenario. Alicia and the prince weren't just classmates, they had been lovers for years, their engagement sealed long ago. That meant Eliza's feelings were nothing more than a one-sided crush. And now, she had stumbled right into their secret date. To protect that relationship, Alicia practically tossed the burden onto Lux. He tried to call out to Eliza, but she was already breaking apart inside. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered that she knew she was never good enough. Hearing this shattered Lux, because he suddenly remembered Eliza's feelings of inferiority toward her sister were a core part of who she was. Alicia was flawless in every way, brilliant in her studies, unmatched in magic, and blessed with a warm personality that drew people in. Next to her, Eliza always felt lacking. Even her looks seemed less striking when compared side by side. In the original timeline, she only found salvation after meeting the protagonist during the game's main story, which was still 5 years away. Lux clenched his fists as he looked at her, silently rooting for her to hold on until then. But when he saw her shoulders trembling and tears spilling down, his heart twisted. 5 years of waiting and this pain, that was far too cruel. Eliza lowered her head, feeling foolish for ever thinking she could outshine her sister. To her, it was impossible. But Lux quickly disagreed, insisting she wasn't losing to anyone. His words only irritated Eliza. She snapped back, asking what he could possibly know about her. Without hesitation, Lux told her he knew everything about her. Eliza froze, startled and a little uneasy. She warned him not to talk like that, saying it was creepy. But Lux pressed on, his tone serious, which only fueled her frustration. She challenged him, demanding he prove it by telling her where she surpassed her perfect older sister. Taking a deep breath, Lux answered. He reminded her that even though she was an aristocrat, she secretly pushed herself in sword training. She wasn't naturally skilled, but she still worked hard because she wanted to protect the people under her care. Eliza frowned, her eyes falling to her hands roughened and scarred from training. She knew he was telling the truth. Lux continued, explaining that he had noticed more. He knew she treated her servants fairly, never looking down on them. He knew she was gentle with children and even kind to animals. He knew how she would laugh suddenly and then glare to hide her embarrassment, and how she often regretted her harsh words after saying them. Lux told her it wasn't about comparing herself to her sister. She had her own strengths, qualities no one else could replace, and those were the very things he admired most about her. His voice rose until he was shouting, declaring his feelings with the weight of someone who had seen her true self countless times. Lux, in his own way, was laying her life out like her personal highlight reel. Satisfied, he thought he had delivered a heartfelt confession, but Eliza looked shaken. Her face turned red, and after a pause, she muttered that he was seriously creepy. That's when Lux realized maybe he had gone a little too far. Lux, meanwhile, felt like his heart was melting after hearing Eliza's words. But then she turned to him with a bright smile, admitting she felt a little better. She even thanked him, which eased the weight he'd been carrying inside. Seeing her in higher spirits, Lux quickly urged her to come along. Without hesitation, he grabbed her hand and pulled her with him. Eliza gasped, startled, demanding to know where they were going. Lux only grinned as they ran, telling her they were going to take revenge for the frustration she had just endured. Deep inside, Lux knew he was willing to do anything for his heroine. He planned everything with Eliza in mind. Together, they arrived where Alicia and the prince were, acting innocent like a pair of clueless children. It was Lux's subtle way of striking back for Eliza's sake. He even thought this might help her talk to the prince more, though in reality, it wasn't going so smoothly. Leaning close, Lux whispered in her ear, pointing out that she hadn't spoken to the prince at all. Eliza jumped in surprise, her cheeks turning red as she scolded him for suddenly whispering so close. Lux was stunned by her reaction, wondering if it meant something, but he brushed it aside, deciding she was simply nervous around the prince. With that uncertain thought, his very first meeting with the heroine came to a close. Later, Lux and his companions headed back home. Sitting inside the carriage, he still couldn't believe he had finally met Eliza. His mind raced with excitement as he wondered who fate would bring him to next. But the moment he arrived home, his joy was cut short by shocking news: his brother Dennis had returned. Lux cursed under his breath, realizing this was a problem of an entirely different scale. Morga, who was nearby, immediately called out in concern. Lux's chest tightened as he remembered the truth about Dennis. Their mother had taken her own life after the trauma of giving birth to a child with the cursed evil eye. Because of that, Lux and Dennis's bond as brothers had never stood a chance. Lux shivered at the thought, convinced that Dennis must despise him. Out of nowhere, a voice spoke up behind him, asking why he would think his own brother hated him. Lux froze in terror, his whole life flashing before his eyes as he turned and saw Dennis standing there. The shock hit so hard that his legs gave out, and he dropped to the floor. The silence was awkward, but Dennis smoothly took over, apologizing for making everyone wait. With a cheerful grin, he proudly declared that Dennis Zeldia had finally returned. Acting way too dramatic, he teased that Lux must have been lonely without him, but reassured his younger brother not to worry anymore because he was back now. His loud, over-the-top tone only made Lux more uncomfortable. He had expected a final boss encounter, not what felt like a corny family reunion scene. Lux stared at his brother, horrified, wondering what on earth was wrong with this man. He had already repeated the same line twice. Suddenly, Dennis crouched down to meet Lux at eye level, commenting on something about his appearance. Lux panicked, certain he meant his cursed eye, and hurried to come up with an excuse. But before he could even get a word out, Dennis surprised him with a compliment, instead praising his outfit and saying he looked like a proper young noble. Dennis was thrilled, claiming Lux now even resembled him. Relieved, Lux realized his brother had only been talking about his clothes, not the eye he feared so much. Still, Dennis's excessive enthusiasm gave off an odd vibe, as he repeated again how well Lux was dressed. Lux politely thanked him, but in the back of his mind, he couldn't ignore how redundant his brother sounded. As he quietly observed Dennis's behavior, he noticed something strange. There wasn't even the slightest sign of hatred in his brother's eyes. Could Dennis actually be a decent person? That night, the two brothers sat down and shared dinner together. During dinner, Dennis started rambling about his past, saying he once had a friend who always glared at him with jealousy. Trying to be kind, Dennis reached out to that friend, but somehow, it ended with him being dragged to the principal's office. The teachers had immediately sighed, saying, "Well, of course it's the Zeldia kid." From there, Dennis just kept going on and on, telling story after story. Lux quickly realized his older brother talked way too much, and worse, he seemed to throw in the same annoying catchphrase every few minutes. To Lux, it felt like Dennis hadn't done anything but brag since he sat down. But in the middle of his endless chatter, Dennis mentioned something that made Lux snap to attention: his lightning attribute. That was rare, and Lux knew it. Excited, Lux steered the conversation and asked more about it. Dennis proudly explained that lightning was an extremely uncommon power, and throughout history, only a handful of people had ever mastered it. Of course, he bragged that he was one of those chosen few, repeating his cheesy line again and again. Lux, however, wasn't cringing, he was stunned. His brother actually had lightning powers. That was way too cool, and there was no way he could let it slide. He had to copy it with his evil eye. Determined, Lux asked to see his brother's magic in action. But Dennis brushed him off, saying it wasn't something you just show on command. Lux insisted, but Dennis kept refusing. So finally, Lux pulled out his ultimate weapon, puppy dog eyes. Unable to resist his little brother's pleading face, Dennis sighed and gave in, agreeing to show him. After dinner, the brothers headed outside to the yard. Lux eagerly asked what kind of magic Dennis would show him first. Dennis explained that he'd start with a basic spell called Thunderbolt. The moment Lux heard the name, his imagination went wild. He pictured something incredible, his eyes practically sparkling with excitement. Preparing himself, he activated his evil eye, ready to copy every detail. Dennis raised his scepter dramatically and shouted with pride, "Thunderbolt!" But instead of a powerful blast, only a tiny flash of light appeared before fading almost immediately. Lux froze, his excitement crumbling. He forced a small smile and asked awkwardly if that was really it. This is what happens when you give theater kids magic, he thought. Dennis, on the other hand, looked completely embarrassed. Lux quickly hid his disappointment and showered Dennis with praise, but Dennis wasn't fooled. He sighed, admitting to himself that he had failed. The next day, as Lux walked down the corridor with Morga, he couldn't help but talk about the letdown. Still, he gave his brother some credit. It wasn't Dennis's fault that Lux had hyped it up too much in his head. Just then, they spotted Dennis stepping out of a nearby room, drenched in sweat and out of breath. Curious, Lux asked what he had been doing, but Dennis brushed it off, calling it just a little something. Not convinced, Lux peeked inside the room. To his surprise, traces of magic were scattered everywhere, filling the space with lingering energy. Morga asked if this was Dennis's training, and Lux confirmed it, realizing there was no other explanation. His brother really was working hard, but at that point, there wasn't much Lux could do for him. Just then, Morga raised her hand and lit a small flame in her palm, warning Lux to be careful. Lux thanked her in surprise before asking if that was really fire magic. With pride, Morga confirmed it, leaving Lux completely stunned. Horrified, he demanded to know how she could even use magic. After hesitating, Morga finally admitted the truth: she had eaten the sandwich. Lux was speechless. That burnt food look-alike he created. She actually ate it. But Morga didn't deny it, explaining that after consuming it, she somehow gained fire magic. Lux couldn't wrap his head around it. How was this possible? And why didn't he remember anything like this happening in the game? Curiosity burning inside him, Lux made another one of those strange sandwiches, determined to test it again. A month later, he followed Dennis to the training yard. When Lux asked what he planned to show him, Dennis only told him to come along. What Dennis didn't know was that for weeks, Lux had been sneaking food copies into his meals. If Morga could gain fire magic from it, surely his brother would show some results too. Lux was basically feeding his brother X potions. His jaw dropped. From Dennis's scepter exploded a blinding bolt of lightning, tearing into the ground and leaving behind a massive crater. Lux froze in disbelief. This was a top-tier lightning spell. There was no way he had only been experimenting with food copies. How could they create such terrifying power? The realization made him uneasy, and no matter how he thought about it, none of it made sense. Dennis, feeling more confident than ever, joked that his own talent scared him sometimes. Lux gave an awkward laugh, though deep down he knew his brother deserved real praise. His eyes then landed on Dennis's bandaged hand, a clear sign of his dedication and effort. Out of nowhere, Dennis brought up Lux's evil eye. Lux froze, surprised that the dreaded topic had finally surfaced. Gathering himself, he explained that the ability could actually be switched off. Dennis asked if he figured that out alone, and Lux nodded while questioning why he wanted to know. Dennis smiled and told him not to carry every burden by himself. He reminded Lux that while he was gifted, he didn't need to face everything alone. He had a brother to lean on. That promise brought a warm smile to Lux's face as he quietly accepted his brother's words. That night, Morga praised Lux for doing a great job. Exhausted, he collapsed onto his bed, thanking her for playing along. She replied that she was glad things turned out smoothly, and Lux agreed. His mind drifted back to Dennis's reassuring words, and for the first time in a while, he felt truly comforted knowing he had someone to depend on. Just then, a maid walked in with a letter addressed to him. Lux's eyes lit up with excitement as he opened it, an invitation to the kingdom's 10th anniversary celebration. This was no ordinary event. It marked the official start of the game's storyline, bringing all the characters together in the royal capital. There would be swordsmanship tournaments, grand dances, and countless festivities. At last, Blaze Fantasy was truly beginning. The royal capital came alive as the kingdom celebrated its grand 10th anniversary. The Zeldia family's attendants wandered through the crowded streets, marveling at the lively festival that stretched across the entire nation. Morga glanced back at Lux, expecting him to share the same excitement, but instead, tears welled up in his eyes. Shocked, she quickly realized he wasn't sad, he was overwhelmed. After all his days of relentless training, he had finally made it here. This was the true beginning of Blasphemy. Soon after, everyone gathered inside the massive arena for the sword fighting tournament. Lux stood among the challengers, ready to prove himself. Before the matches began, Morga bowed respectfully, wishing him the best of luck. Out of nowhere, Dennis showed up, sneaking in with a wide grin. Lux blinked in surprise, wondering if his brother had actually come to support him. To his amazement, Dennis had even brought matching props to cheer him on. He loudly encouraged Lux to fight in a way that wouldn't bring shame to the Zeldia name, though the irony of that line made Lux roll his eyes inside. At that moment, Morga announced that the tournament bracket had been posted. Lux rushed over, scanning the names until his eyes locked on a familiar one, Claire. Just as he expected, Claire Wingate was here. She wasn't just anyone, she was one of Blasphemy's main heroines and the daughter of the Royal Knights General. Her swordsmanship was unmatched, making her one of the strongest in the entire story. Lux knew their showdown was destined for the finals, but he couldn't help but wonder how he'd measure up against her. Suddenly, a thrill surged through him. His lips curled into a wide grin, his cheeks flushed, and laughter burst out uncontrollably. The sight startled Morga, who had no idea why Lux looked so giddy, but inside, he was burning with excitement for the battle ahead. Morga glanced at Lux with concern, asking if he was really okay after all. He was both laughing and crying at once. Brushing it off, Lux made his way to the arena tunnel, where he unexpectedly ran into Eliza. With a small smile, he greeted her, saying it had been a while, and curiously asked why she was there. Eliza immediately got defensive, demanding to know why she couldn't be. To her shock, Lux teased her, wondering if she had come just to cheer him on. His words turned her cheeks bright red. Flustered, she explained she wasn't competing and just had some free time, but her excuse crumbled when she noticed the knowing grin on his face. Embarrassed, she warned him to stop looking at her like that, before blurting out that she would be watching so he'd better win. Lux chuckled softly, thanked her, and rushed ahead, his heart lighter than before. Thinking about Eliza and Dennis rooting for him filled Lux with pride. The boy once scorned by everyone had worked hard to come this far, and now he wasn't standing alone. Soon, Lux stepped into the massive arena, the crowd roaring around him as he awaited his first battle. His eyes locked onto his opponent, and the first thing he noticed was the man's sword. The opponent grumbled about the injury prevention spell placed on their weapons, insisting he wanted a real blade instead. Lux, cautious of this unknown fighter, tried to ease the tension, reminding him this was meant to test swordsmanship, not spill blood. But the man's expression twisted with disdain. He spat cruel words, saying Lux had no right to speak as though he were human. Calling him a cursed child of the evil eye, he declared that abominations like Lux were the kind of monsters he wanted to cut down with his sword. Rage bubbled inside Lux. If this guy wanted to fight with real blades, then maybe Lux should be the one to show him just how sharp his edge could be. Lux snapped back in anger, ready to retaliate, but his opponent raised his voice first, calling for the referee to keep a close eye on the evil-eyed one. With a cruel laugh, he accused Lux of being the type to use dirty tricks. Lux quickly defended himself, insisting he'd never stooped that low. But the boy only shrugged, his dismissive attitude stoking Lux's fury even more. Determined to prove himself, Lux declared proudly that he was Lux Zeldia, and on his family name, he would fight honorably. His opponent sneered, mocking that a servant of the Demon King had no name worth swearing by. Before Lux could respond, the referee's voice cut in, announcing the start of the 12th match of the first round. At once, the boy let out a fierce battle cry that made Lux pause in confusion. Then, in a flash, he revealed his magic, proclaiming it was time to wipe out monsters. The overwhelming surge of power shocked Dennis, while Joris admitted it was stronger than most of their soldiers could ever hope to match. The boy introduced himself as Gellius Malaysia, a descendant of a noble family nearly equal to the Great Three Houses. Morga quickly argued that Lux's talent was no less, and Joris agreed, pointing out that the power of Lux's evil eye was in a league of its own. But then Joris's face froze in surprise. Lux wasn't using his powers at all. Gellius smirked, taunting Lux by asking if he was too scared to fight back. He sneered further, saying he would have preferred to face him with real steel instead of dulled blades, just to carve into a so-called monster. From the sidelines, Dennis shouted for Lux to stay alert, while Morga and the maids gasped in horror. With that, Gellius charged forward, his sword glowing with deadly energy as he roared for Lux to feel the wrath of his hyper slash. To everyone's shock, Lux blocked the strike with ease, leaving Gellius and the crowd speechless. Gritting his teeth, Gellius demanded to know what trick Lux had pulled. Lux smirked and teased him, asking if he really wanted to hold a conversation with the so-called cursed child. That jab made Gellius curse under his breath before launching forward again, unleashing 2 more hyper slashes in a row. But once more, Lux deflected them cleanly. Gellius staggered back, gasping for air, confused as to why his attacks couldn't land. Up in the stands, Dennis wondered if Lux had secretly used magic, but Joris only chuckled. He recognized the truth, this wasn't magic at all. It was the result of the young master's relentless daily training. Dennis struggled to accept it, stunned that Gellius's overwhelming strength was being dismantled by sheer skill. In the arena, Lux mocked Gellius, pointing out that even though he came from a powerful bloodline, he couldn't touch him with swordsmanship alone. With that, Lux swung his blade with such force that it rattled Gellius's sword and sent him flying across the arena floor. The crowd gasped as the boy crashed down, the battle ending in an instant. The referee declared Lux the winner. Turning back, Lux couldn't resist one last taunt, asking if Gellius wasn't relieved they hadn't been fighting with real blades. The crowd roared. Lux had completely owned that match. Afterward, Morga praised him proudly, while Eliza quietly expressed her relief. Morga tried nudging her to be more outspoken with her praise, but Eliza hesitated, her words catching in her throat. Then, she suddenly noticed Lux walking away, his presence heavy with a gloomy aura despite the victory. Lux pressed a hand over his eye, replaying Gellius's cruel words in his head. As he blended into the crowd, whispers spread around him. People were saying he must have used his evil eye to defeat Gellius, or maybe he pulled some kind of dirty trick. The comments stung, but Lux forced himself to stay calm. Let them talk, he thought. He'd just have to endure it. When it came time for his second match, the referee announced that his opponent had forfeited. Lux advanced without even lifting his sword. The same thing happened again in his third round. Confused, he wondered why everyone was refusing to face him. His answer came quickly. 2 boys nearby sneered, calling him the cursed holder of the evil eye. Lux quickly tried to defend himself, insisting he hadn't used his eye at all. But the boys only laughed harder, mocking him and saying no one could really know for sure. One even teased that if he had to fight Lux, he'd run away too. Lux kept trying to explain, but they backed away, keeping their distance as if he was contagious. They said no one would want to fight a creep like him, and he should have just quit. The words cut deep. Lux raised his hand to his eye again, wondering if things would ever change. He had been given a second chance at life, yet moments like this reminded him how little separated him from his old, cursed existence. With heavy steps, he walked away from the venue, feeling like he was the only one who ever believed he could come this far. Eventually, the finals began. Lux had reached them almost entirely by default, aside from his first battle. His supporters watched him nervously, sensing the fire in him had dimmed. Then the referee introduced his opponent, someone who had crushed every one of her matches in mere seconds. Her name was Claire Wingate. Lux looked around the arena, worried that maybe even Claire didn't want to fight him. But then, out of nowhere, she appeared, apologizing for being late. She gracefully jumped into the arena, leaving Lux stunned. She explained she hadn't had time to warm up earlier and was just loosening her body. Then she turned to him with a calm smile, introducing herself as Claire Wingate, and asked if he was Lux Zeldia. Lux didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked if she was really sure about fighting him. Claire paused for a moment before saying she had one condition. Nervously, Lux rushed to assure her he wouldn't cheat and would fight honorably. But Claire shook her head. Her condition was different. She wanted him to fight with everything he had. She pointed out that he hadn't gone all out in his earlier matches, and that fact alone made her excited. Just as she expected, he had been holding back. Then she shocked Lux even more by telling him to use his evil eye. He hesitated, uneasy at the thought, but Claire cut him off, firmly repeating that he should give it his all. Finally, Lux gave in and activated his evil eye. But almost immediately, his nerves kicked in, and he asked if it wasn't creepy. Claire only chuckled, saying no, it wasn't creepy at all. To her, his eyes were the same as hers. Confused, Lux asked what she meant, so she leaned in close, her gaze locked on his, and explained, they both had eyes that sought strength, eyes that refused to waver. She asked him straight out if she was wrong, refusing to look away. Lux was left speechless, staring back at her while softly muttering her name. Then, with her usual confidence, Claire turned away and told him his evil eye didn't matter. Claire tossed aside her cape without hesitation, daring Lux to face her with his true strength. Lux couldn't help but smile. This was just like her. Soon after, the referee called for them to take their places. In an instant, powerful auras burst from both of them, proof of their incredible skill. Lux thanked Claire with a grin but warned that he'd be giving her everything he had. Claire simply welcomed the challenge, saying it would make things more fun. With that, the finals officially began. Both of them charged forward, determined to let their blades decide who stood at the top. The tension in the arena skyrocketed. Among the crowd, some whispered that the match was between the Knight Commander's daughter and the Evil Eye Kid. Rumors about Lux cheating spread quickly, and soon people were shouting insults, telling him to give up and lose already. Morga and Eliza overheard the cruel words, their faces filled with worry for Lux. But Lux shut out the noise. He reminded himself that this fight wasn't about the crowd, it was about answering Claire's resolve with his own. Their swords clashed, the sound ringing out as neither side gave an inch. When they finally broke apart, both steadied themselves, eyes locked with burning focus. Lux's nerves tightened. He knew Claire was every bit as strong as he imagined. One slip-up, one moment of hesitation, and she would finish him. Then suddenly, her speed left him stunned. Claire noticed his expression and teased him, asking why he looked so surprised. He hadn't even realized that her movements were so quick they blurred before his eyes. A cold realization hit Lux, she still wasn't even fighting at full power. Claire suddenly turned her back on Lux, making him call out to her in confusion. She glanced over her shoulder with a sharp look, reminding him that she had already told him to fight seriously. Her tone carried irritation as she complained that he was starting to bore her. Lux struggled to steady his breathing, insisting that he really was fighting at full strength. But deep down, he knew he hadn't pushed himself all the way yet. He tightened his focus and admitted to Claire that what she had seen so far was only about 80% of his power. Claire frowned, doubting his words, and Lux quickly corrected himself, saying it was actually closer to 50%. That answer eased her mind, and she pressed him to show his true ability. Lux promised her that from now on, he would fight with everything he had, but she had to do the same. Though skeptical, Claire nodded seriously and told him she was counting on him. Without warning, she dashed forward at blistering speed, warning him that she didn't want the fight to end too quickly. Lux's eyes widened, he could hardly track her movement. She exhaled sharply, then struck with a blow so powerful that Lux barely managed to block it. The force pushed him down to his knees, his sword trembling under the impact. At that moment, he realized her swordsmanship flowed like a graceful dance, each strike carrying beauty and destruction at once. The arena erupted with cheers, the crowd shouting Claire's name with wild excitement. In the stands, Morga and Eliza watched with growing fear, their hearts tightening at every clash. Dennis nervously turned to Joris, asking if Lux could handle this. Joris admitted that Lux might not hold out for long, but if he endured, he still had a real chance of turning the fight around. Inside the arena, Lux struggled to keep up with Claire's non-stop flurry of strikes. She mocked him, asking if he really intended to end the fight in such a disappointing way. Her words stunned Lux, and before he could recover, Claire vanished from his sight, moving so quickly it felt like she had teleported. She teased him, asking if his eyes could even follow her speed, but Lux was still frozen in shock. From the stands, Dennis shouted desperately that Claire was already behind him, while the girls cried out Lux's name in panic. Claire sighed with her eyes closed, clearly unimpressed. She muttered that it was a pity she had expected more from him. Raising her sword for the final strike, she prepared to end it, only for Lux to spring into the air at the last second, narrowly dodging the blow. The sudden move caught everyone off guard, even Claire herself. The crowd gasped as Lux landed, bowing his head slightly to apologize, admitting he had been acting like a fool. Then, his evil eye flared to life, its aura heavy enough to make Claire tense up. He explained that he had simply needed time to adapt to her overwhelming power. Now that he had adjusted, he promised it was his turn to fight at full strength. With renewed focus, Lux launched forward like lightning, swinging his blade straight at Claire. She parried the strike, but quickly realized something shocking. Lux had mimicked her very own sword dance. Lux apologized again, explaining that his evil eye naturally allowed him to copy techniques. It wasn't intentional, but Claire only laughed, amused rather than offended. She told him not to apologize, because this was exactly what she wanted. His imitation didn't bother her, it thrilled her. For the first time, Claire found the fight exciting. All her past battles, even with her father the Sword Master and the Knight Commander, had left her bored. But against Lux, she finally felt alive. For as long as she could remember, Claire had been unmatched. The sword she cherished had become something she mastered alone, leaving her without a true rival. That was why she had waited all this time for someone who could finally meet her blade head-on. After deflecting Lux's strike, she landed gracefully, but Lux immediately noticed that her stance had shifted once again. Without warning, Claire leapt high into the air and unleashed a crushing swing, the impact cracking the arena floor beneath them. Lux managed to block it, though the force rattled through his arms. He couldn't deny it, this strike was on a completely different level from what she had shown moments earlier. For a moment, he wondered if Claire was creating a brand new style of swordsmanship right in the middle of their fight, something that could surpass even him. But Lux refused to falter. If that was the path she chose, then he would rise to meet it. Tightening his grip, he clashed his sword against hers. The collision was so explosive it sent a deafening shockwave through the arena, forcing the spectators to cover their ears in panic, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Claire staggered slightly from the recoil, astonished that Lux had taken her new technique head-on. Lux only smirked and winked at her, saying that if she tried to rise above him, he would use his evil eye to chase her down no matter what. Claire's eyes lit up with pure excitement. She declared that he was the best opponent she had ever faced, and that she couldn't wait to keep fighting until only one of them was left standing. Lux welcomed her challenge with equal passion. Neither of them held back anymore. Every swing was faster, sharper, and heavier than the last. The audience was left in awe, whispering that this was no ordinary duel. They had never witnessed a match this intense before. Morga quickly noticed how the crowd's energy had shifted, while Eliza was too busy cheering for Lux to care. Dennis commented that both Lux and Claire were growing stronger with every exchange, their offense and defense evolving right before everyone's eyes. Joris agreed but added that Lux's true turning point hadn't come yet. Lux himself was wondering just how far they could both push their limits. Morga thought the match was exhilarating, while also wondering if Lux's evil eye would grow stronger in the process. Claire, on the other hand, wasn't worried about winning or losing, she was simply having the time of her life. For her, if the fight could go on forever, that would have been enough. But every duel must end, and in the end, Claire was declared the victor. Lux lay flat on the ground, unable to move after pushing his body past its limit. Claire collapsed beside him, giggling about how much fun the match had been. Lux admitted it truly was an incredible fight. A moment later, Claire sat up and suddenly asked Lux to fight her again. Lux looked stunned, so she clarified that she meant casual sparring. Lux gave an awkward laugh, thinking, didn't we just finish nearly killing each other? Still, he smiled and said he'd be honored if she was okay with it. Claire asked if he was serious, then suddenly threw her arms around him in a tight hug. She happily told him how glad she was, though Lux looked a little uncomfortable. He didn't remember Claire having such a childish side, but it seemed he had earned her approval. As Claire clung to him, the referee walked over and reminded them the award ceremony was about to begin. Lux tried to leave quietly, but the referee stopped him, asking where he was headed. Lux explained that someone as disliked as him would only ruin the ceremony by being on stage. Claire didn't agree with his gloomy thoughts and instead gestured toward the stands. Puzzled, Lux turned around and saw the entire arena on their feet, cheering wildly for both of them. The same spectators who once booed him were now apologizing, admitting their mistake, and praising the incredible fight he and Claire had shown. But deep down, Lux wasn't thrilled about their sudden change of heart. To him, it felt selfish, like they could switch sides whenever they wanted. Still, he hadn't been fighting for their approval anyway. What mattered was that they finally acknowledged the truth. In the middle of the deafening cheers, his true supporters stood out. Dennis held his head high, proud to call Lux his brother. Joris gave a simple nod of approval, recognizing how well Lux fought. Morga looked at him with nothing but admiration, while Eliza couldn't hide her worry. As the energy in the arena began to settle, Lux and Claire approached each other. They shook hands, and Lux thanked her sincerely for saving him. Claire smiled warmly, saying it was her pleasure, and that she genuinely enjoyed every moment of their battle. Later, Lux wandered through the bustling streets of the festival, his eyes sparkling with excitement. His body was still sore from the previous day's match, but there was no way he could miss the second day of the anniversary celebration. The festival was vibrant and colorful, with decorations that carried a distinctly Japanese flair unique to Blasphemon. As Lux took it all in, his eyes grew misty. The lively atmosphere, the music, the food, it all felt like he had stepped straight into the world of a JRPG, something he never thought he'd truly experience. Even so, Lux quietly admitted to himself that festivals weren't really his thing. Behind him, Dennis was having the time of his life, loudly praising the takoyaki he was devouring. His face lit up with joy as he savored every bite, and Lux couldn't help but smile, happy to see his brother enjoying himself so much. Between mouthfuls, Dennis reminded Lux not to wander off since he was acting as his guardian for the day. Lux just gave an awkward smile, knowing he never agreed to that role. Drifting a little ahead, Lux suddenly heard a familiar voice call out to him. It was Eliza. She asked if it was all right for him to be up and about so soon after the tournament. Lux puffed out his chest, assuring her he didn't need rest when something this exciting was going on. Eliza looked relieved, but then froze when she noticed Lux staring. He had just realized she was wearing a yukata, something he had never seen her in before. Embarrassed, Eliza shifted nervously, asking what was wrong. Lux ignored the question and instead asked if she had come alone. Eliza's eyes wavered, wondering if he thought it was a bad thing, and quietly worrying she might have expected too much from this simple meeting. Before the moment grew too awkward, Dennis popped up with a mischievous grin. Without hesitation, he nudged Lux closer to Eliza, teasing that a true gentleman wouldn't leave a lady on her own. He even clasped their hands together like a matchmaker finishing a deal, declaring it would be terrible if they got separated. Both Lux and Eliza froze in shock, too stunned to object. Dennis gave his brother a cheeky salute, hinting that the rest was up to him. Lux shuddered at the implication, not even wanting to imagine what his brother was suggesting. But before either of them could react further, Dennis's attention was stolen by the aroma of grilled sausages, and he dashed off without a second thought. Lux quickly shouted after his brother, reminding him about the whole guardian responsibility. Left in an awkward spot, he turned to Eliza and apologized for Dennis's strange antics. Eliza, still holding his hand, hesitated before softly admitting that Dennis wasn't completely wrong. Blushing, she nervously twirled her hair and said she didn't mind if they continued walking together. Lux froze for a moment, stunned that she had basically given him the green light. And so, the two of them spent the evening exploring the festival side by side. Lux could hardly believe it, it felt almost unreal. Later, a voice suddenly called down to him from a tree branch. It was Claire, happily greeting him. Seeing her dressed casually for once sent a wave of excitement through Lux, leaving him almost giddy. Claire tilted her head, concerned, asking if he was all right, but Eliza quickly assured her not to worry. Soon after, Claire politely introduced herself to Eliza, who immediately recognized her from the tournament. Lux then realized this was actually their very first meeting. As the three stood together, Eliza leaned a little closer to Lux, clearly looking tired. Claire picked up on it right away and excused herself. When Lux asked why she was leaving so soon, she just chuckled, explaining that she didn't want to get in the way. Honestly, Eliza leaning on him like her health bar just hit yellow wasn't helping the vibe. Curious, Claire suddenly asked if the two of them were in that kind of relationship. Eliza's face turned bright red as she frantically explained that Lux was only her childhood friend. Claire smiled, saying she was glad, though in the back of her mind, she wondered why she even felt the need to say that. Lux turned away from them both, quietly realizing the atmosphere between the three of them had shifted. Lux could practically feel the weight of their stares, the tension pressing down on him. Trying to take control of the situation, Eliza gently hooked his pinky and tugged him forward, as if to claim him. Claire's voice cut in, asking why the two of them were holding hands, but neither gave her an answer. Lux muttered his annoyance, so Eliza quickly explained that she only did it to make sure they wouldn't get separated in the crowd. That excuse gave Claire an idea. She immediately reached out to grab Lux's hand too. But before their fingers could lock, Eliza smacked it away without hesitation. Yep, this was turning into a full-on hand-holding showdown. Claire blinked in confusion and asked why she wasn't allowed, to which Eliza coolly replied there was no particular reason. Lux, meanwhile, was a mess inside, his stomach swarming with butterflies. Suddenly, Claire pouted and accused them of being unfair. She insisted she had the right to hold Lux's hand too, leaving both him and Eliza stunned. Eliza quickly protested, saying this wasn't a game, and Lux nodded with a nervous smile. But Claire wasn't backing down. She looked straight at Lux and asked if he didn't like holding her hand. Flustered, Lux denied ever saying that. She then shifted her focus to Eliza, questioning why she was so worked up. Eliza stammered out a denial, while Lux desperately tried to stop the two from breaking into a fight. Lux was completely lost, wondering how things had turned into this and what he was supposed to do. Both girls called out to him at the same time, practically forcing him to choose a side. The pressure became too much, and he finally shouted that he'd just hold both their hands together. Claire burst out laughing, saying this was surprisingly fun, while Eliza sulked, admitting she was only tolerating it. Lux, however, muttered that it still didn't feel right. As the three of them strolled through the crowded festival streets, Lux kept trying to think of a way out of this strange situation. Suddenly, Claire broke away from them, dashing toward a stall that caught her eye. Her face lit up when she saw a collection of swords on display. She grabbed one eagerly and challenged Lux to continue their duel from the other day. Eliza frowned, pointing out that it wasn't possible in the middle of such a busy crowd. Lux couldn't help but chuckle. In the game, Claire had always been cool and composed, but right now she looked more like an excited kid. Still, he had to admit her playful side had its own charm. While he was lost in thought, Eliza tried snatching the sword out of Claire's hands. She called for Lux to step in, while Claire pouted and protested like a stubborn child. Before long, the two girls were back at it again, both fighting for Lux's attention.